You're listening to the Alpha Love Stories, where love is dangerous, loyalty bleeds, and silence hides more than words ever could. If you crave dark, forbidden romances filled with obsession and fate, like this video and subscribe, because this story will own your heartbeat. The night the moon turned its back on me, I knew I had truly been forsaken. Cold wind clawed through the broken windows of the pack hall, carrying the scent of ash, iron, and something crueler: betrayal. The torches flickered against the stone walls, and every pair of eyes in that circle glared at me as if I were the disease that would rot their kingdom. By decree of the Alpha King, Elder Garen's voice boomed, his tone trembling with false authority. Liora of the Healer's line is hereby exiled for deceit, impurity, and betrayal against her mate bond. Mate bond. The words twisted like knives inside me, because my mate bond was to him. Alpha Kale Varen, the man standing only a few feet away, his golden eyes like fire forged in ice. My alpha, my everything. He didn't even look at me, not once. He stood tall in his ceremonial cloak, silver-threaded, the moonlight spilling over his shoulders like a crown. But his expression, empty, hard, unreadable, was worse than hate. It was indifference. I had loved him since the first night our souls burned together under the blood moon. I had tended his wounds after every battle, whispered his name in every prayer. And yet here I was, on my knees before him, wrists bound with iron, accused of things I didn't do. "Speak, Liora," the elder demanded. "Confess before the moon goddess. Tell us why you betrayed your alpha." My lips trembled, but the truth stuck in my throat like poison, because there was no betrayal, only a lie that had been whispered into Kale's ear by her, Seren, the Beta's daughter, the perfect polished viper who had always wanted him for herself. I didn't... Enough. Kale's voice cut through the hall. The sound of it shattered me more than the chains around my wrists. "Your lies end here, Liora. You played with sacred bonds. You made me believe..." His jaw clenched. "You made me weak. Weak, that word. It struck deeper than claws ever could. Because to Kale, weakness was worse than death." He took a step closer, and for a heartbeat, I thought, hoped, he might see it in my eyes. The truth, the love, the desperation. But he only lowered his voice and said, "I should have let the wolves tear you apart that night in the forest. Exile is mercy. Don't make me regret it." My heart stopped. He turned away, and the last thread that tethered me to life snapped. When they dragged me out into the snow, the crowd parted. No one dared meet my gaze. No one spoke. Only the hiss of the wind filled the silence. I stumbled once, twice, my bare feet cutting against the ice, but I didn't cry. Not when they ripped my marking chain from my neck. Not when the gates of the Crescent Palace shut behind me. Not even when the wolves howled. Hungry, waiting. Only when the forest swallowed me whole did I finally break. I fell to my knees beside the frozen river. Gasping, trembling, the mark on my collarbone still glowing faintly. His mark. And then pain struck. Deep, twisting, unnatural. A fever spread through my body like wildfire. I clutched my stomach, choking on air. My vision blurred, moonlight swimming in crimson waves. I thought it was just exhaustion, the bite of cold. But when I pressed my trembling hands against my belly, I felt it. Life. 2 faint heartbeats beneath my own. Twins. Kyle's twins. The moon above seemed to weep, its light dimming as if it knew what had begun that night. He had rejected me, left me to die, but inside me his blood still lived, and I swore, through my tears and the bite of the cold, "They will never know your cruelty. Kale, I will raise them where your name means nothing." but the forest had other plans, and the night was not done with me yet. The first howl rose like a blade sliding free of its sheath. It cut through the trees, through the hush of the falling snow, through the ache in my bones, and every part of me understood. Exile had never been the sentence. Death was. I forced myself upright, palms sliding on ice-slick rock. The frozen river lay to my left, a dark ribbon threading the forest, and to my right, the pines stood like watchmen carved from shadow. Breath steamed from my lips. The mark on my collarbone, his mark, had cooled to a mute ember, but the echo of it still throbbed beneath my skin, stubborn as a bruise that refused to fade. 2 heartbeats fluttered beneath my own. Fragile. Insistent. "I won't let them touch you," I whispered, pressing my hand to my belly. "On the moon's name, I swear it." Another howl answered the first, closer. The blackguard ran in triads, trained to drive prey like needles into cloth, one to harry, one to herd, one to kill. They would be on me soon. They would sink their teeth into my throat and report to their king that justice had been done. I staggered along the riverbank, using the pale shine of ice as my guide. The snow here lay unbroken. If I could keep to the rock, perhaps I could deny them my tracks. My feet had gone numb, which I told myself was a blessing. The iron taste of panic filled my mouth, but beneath it something calmer breathed. An old instinct. The healer's daughter reading the forest the way other girls read books. Wind was traveling east, toward the canyon. Good. I slipped beneath low branches heavy with frost, breaking twigs deliberately, then doubled back to the water's edge. The river was cruel this time of year, thin ice atop a running vein. I crouched, slid my palm along the surface, feeling for seams in the crust. "Please," I asked the river, because the night had stripped me of dignity and left only the truth. "Help me!" The ice surrendered in a tremor and crack. I plunged my hands into the black water and caught a breath that seared my lungs. It felt like knives. It felt like waking in a grave. Still, I forced myself to my elbows, then my chest, then slithered wholly into the river, biting down hard enough on my tongue to choke back a scream. The current caught me like a thief and dragged. Scent. The water would steal it. I let it take me beneath a lace of broken ice, fighting the urge to thrash. Fingers numb, ribs a cage of fire, I counted heartbeats, mine, then the 2 smaller echoes, to anchor myself. The river tore and tumbled, shoved me against slick rocks, kissed my skin with cold so deep it felt like heat. When I finally wrenched myself onto the far bank, clawing at roots, spitting water, hacking breaths that burned, I wanted to weep with relief. But the forest doesn't reward noise. I rolled onto my side, pressed my face into the moss until the world stopped spinning, then crawled into a thicket. My soaked dress clung to me like a shroud. My teeth were a chattering drum in my skull. A branch snapped across the water. I stilled. 3 shapes emerged on the opposite bank, black against the pallid snow. Wolves, bigger than any wild pack, shoulders thick with muscle that moved like coiled rope beneath their fur. Blackguard. Their eyes glowed with the feral calm of trained killers. They paced the edge, noses twitching, confusion prickling their hackles. "Lost her," one growled, voice distorted by his half-shifted jaws. "Scent drowned." "She can't have gone far," another answered. Orders were explicit, orders. My heart stuttered, then raced. Did they come from Kale himself, or from someone speaking in his name, feeding him poison while he stared ahead and pretended he couldn't smell it? In my mind I saw Seren's smile, sugar coated on the tongue and venom to the gut. I waited until they moved upstream, then slid from the thicket and forced my limbs into motion. Water slicked off my skin and froze in an instant. I needed warmth, shelter, anything to bring the color back to my fingers. Before the forest did the blackguard's work for them, the land rose to a low ridge where the trees thinned, and the sky opened like a wound. Beyond, a gash of darkness split the hills, Harrow's Cut, the old ravine people whispered about when fires burned low and wine made them brave. They said the ravine hid a sanctuary that predated the Crescent Palace, a place the moon had carved with her own hand when the world was young, and wolves still prayed with their throats. They said the sanctuary only opened for mothers, old stories for cold nights. I had never believed them. But belief isn't what keeps a body moving. Need does. I angled toward Harrow's Cut, following a deer trail, breath loud in my ears. The wind shifted and brought me a new scent. Smoke, faint and bitter, laced with crushed juniper. An herb fire. Someone else was out here. Every instinct in me shrieked run, but I had no strength to spend on faithless roads. I edged forward until the thorns parted around a notch in the cliff. And there, half hidden by dead vines, crouched the mouth of a cave. A charm hung in its shadow. A coil of silver wire threaded through wolfsbane and deer bone. The wolfsbane made my skin itch from 10 paces away. It wasn't meant for me. It was meant for them. Come in, girl. The voice slid out of the cave like silk over stone. Not blackguard, not court. Older, wiser. Dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with teeth. I should have fled. Instead, I swallowed my fear and ducked into the dark. The cave breathed warmth, thin but real. The smoke bite in the air came from a banked fire in a hollow, over which hung a blackened kettle. The woman crouched beside it had hair like snowmelt, and eyes the color of lichen. Lines marked her face the way rivers mark land, proof of movement, proof of time. She looked at my soaked dress, my trembling hands, the iron bruise of Kale's mark at my collarbone, and didn't bother pretending she hadn't already guessed everything. Lay by the fire, she said, and when I hesitated, she added, They won't cross my wards. Or if they do, they won't leave. Who are you? My voice came out as a crack and a cough. Etta, she said, once midwife to a queen who forgot what it means to be a woman. Now the old thing in the hill that wolves warn their pups about. Off with the wet, she clicked her tongue. You'll do your unborn no favors if you freeze them before they quicken. Unborn. The word rang like a bell. I was too tired to protect the secret, too cold to play at caution. And something in Etta's presence lifted the weight of lies from my chest. I shed the heavy dress with clumsy fingers and wrapped the blanket she thrust at me around my body. It smelled of herbs and smoke and something softer, milk. That made my throat sting with a grief too big to cry. Etta pressed a clay cup into my hands. Steam rose, juniper, rosehip, a bite of ginger. Drink, I swallowed. Heat clawed its way down into my belly, unwinding the claws of cold one by one. When I could breathe without pain, I whispered, They'll kill me if they find me. They'll try, Etta said. But the night is old, and you are not alone. I have no one. She lifted an eyebrow. You have two. My hand moved to my belly without permission. Etta's gaze softened. Not pity, not sanctimony, but something that recognized the cliff's edge and the barefoot girl who stood there. Twins, she said. Rare among your kind, among our kind. She hadn't said wolves the way humans did, with fear edging the syllables. She spoke like someone who knew what it meant to carry a howl in the blood. She rose, shuffled to the back of the cave, and knelt at a stone slab covered in carvings worn shallow by years. Circles, crescents, the long arc of a woman's body sprouting antlers like branches, a wolf curled in her ribs. Old sanctuary, she murmured, built when Luna's first daughters still bled into the earth to ask the forest's blessing. It remembers. It opens for those who carry life. Does it open for those who carry death behind them? I asked, and Etta's mouth twitched. That depends who is doing the chasing, I told her, halting at first. Then, with the restless rush of a river breaking a dam, about the hall, the decree, the way Kale had refused to look at me, about Seren's smile in the corners of rooms and the beta's quiet games. When I reached the river and the blackguard, my voice shook. Etta listened without interruption, hands working a line of silver wire through sprigs of rue and bittersweet. When I ran out of words, she tied the charm and hung it from a hook above the slab. Men who worship power will always mistake gentleness for deceit, she said softly. It makes them easier to steer. I didn't lie, I said. The child in me, small and stubborn, needed someone to hear the truth as if it could anchor me to a version of the world where justice still had teeth. Etta did not offer comfort. You don't have time for the luxury of innocence, she said, not unkindly. The question is not whether you lied. It's whether you plan to live, I flinched. Yes, good. She thrust a small pouch into my hand. It was rough-spun, stained, powdered wolfsbane. Blow it in a wolf's face and run. Don't touch it with bare skin. This, she held up a thin knife with a bone handle, is silver-leafed. It won't kill a shifter clean, but it will make him regret his choices. Outside, a low growl rolled across the ridge. We both went still. The growl rose into a call, not quite a howl. Close. The wards hummed, the charm above the slab shivering until the bone clicked against the hook. Blackguard, Etta said. They've outflanked the river. The floor tilted under me. We have to go. Sanctuary is not elsewhere, Etta said. It's below. With a swift motion, she pressed her palm to one of the carvings. The stone groaned. A seam yawned at the back of the cave where I had seen only shadow before, and a thin breath of air spilled out, warmer than the cave, tinged with the smell of moonflower and old rain. Quickly, we slipped through the seam. Etta pressed a hand to the stone again and the gap sealed, erasing us from the cave as thoroughly as if we had never been. We stood in a narrow passage whose walls shone faintly, not from any torchlight, but from a pale luminescence like milk caught in quartz. The floor dipped and rose. The hum of the wards faded, replaced by a deeper thrum that I felt in my bones, a heartbeat that did not belong to me or the twins. The place itself was alive. Keep your hand on the wall, Etta whispered. It will remember you. Remember me? Sanctuary does not open to strangers twice. We moved. The passage widened, then opened into a chamber that stole my breath. Carved pillars rose like tree trunks, their tops lost in a darkness seeded with faint stars. A pool lay at the center, its surface so still it might have been glass, reflecting a pale glow that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. On the far wall, more carvings, wolves running, women kneeling, a crescent split in two and then made whole again. My knees went weak. The air tasted of iron gone sweet, and a herb I could not name, but knew in my blood. Lay there. Etta pointed to a flat stone beside the pool. Only for a moment. Let it see you. I don't understand. You will. I lay back on the stone. The chill of it ran up my spine and then was gone, replaced by a sensation like sinking into warm honey. The sound of the blackguard above faded. The thrum in the stone met the rhythm of my pulse and matched it, then folded it into a larger rhythm I could not hear but only feel. The twins moved. Not the flutter I had felt by the river, but a roll that made my breath hitch and tears sting my eyes. Life was not a theory or a hope here. It was an oath the body makes to itself and to the world that holds it. I am. Etta's face hovered above mine. They're strong. Will this protect them? It will protect you long enough to make a choice. She rested a hand against the stone and closed her eyes. There is blood in this sanctuary. Old blood. Yours will join it when the time is right. The seam of the world tore open overhead. I flinched, jerking upright, but Edda's hand was already on my shoulder, pushing me down. "Not in here," she said. Outside, they found the cave. The chamber darkened, the glow dimming as if the sanctuary held its breath. Above us, faint and muffled by stone, I heard the scrape of claws, the crack of a snarl, then a voice I knew like pain. "Search everything," Kale said. Calm, cold. The voice of a king who had cut the soft parts from himself. "She's wounded. She can't be far. My body betrayed me." At the sound of his voice, something low in my belly ached with memory. Of hands, of a mouth, of the night the blood moon burned the world clean, and we gave ourselves names that were not titles, but truths. My throat closed. The twins rolled again, as if recognizing the shadow of a presence that had once felt like home. Edda's fingers tightened. "Breathe." "He's here," I whispered, and hated the tremor in my voice. "I know," she said. "Kings rarely dirty their feet unless the ground matters. He thinks I lied. Maybe he prefers to think that. It's easier than admitting he was led. By Seren. I spit the name like a seed. She wanted me gone. I didn't see how far she'd go." "Oh, child," Edda murmured. "You are learning," a snarl closer. The echo of boots. The clatter of stone. A hiss, sharp and pained. The sound of wolfsbane doing its work. Edda's charm sang on an upper frequency that made my teeth ache. "Pull back!" one of the blackguard barked. The wards, silence. Then quieter than his order, Kyle again. "I can smell her." I pressed my fist to my mouth to keep the sound in. The sanctuary's glow flickered. The pool trembled as if a breath had passed over it. Edda leaned close, her whisper so soft it was more breath than speech. "You stand at a crossing, Liora of the healer's line. You can stay beneath the earth and let the world above write its story without you. Or you can rise and write it with your blood." "I'm carrying his heirs," I said, the truth tasting both like victory and doom. "If he finds me, if he takes me back, he will not," Edda said. "Not as he is." I looked up, into the darkness seeded with faint stars, and felt the old, terrible steadiness open in me like a door. The kind that comes when there is nothing left to lose but the future. "What do I have to do?" Edda smiled, small, fierce. "First you rest. Then we make a bargain with the night." Above us, Kale's voice broke through again. Rawer now, the edges fraying. "Liora." It wasn't a command. It wasn't a king's order. It was a man's slip in armor, a name torn out of him before he could sheath it in ice. The sound of it undid me more than the decree, more than the chains, more than the cold river that had tried to claim me. The sanctuary answered with a pulse. One beat, then another, matching the twins' rhythm inside me. I closed my eyes. "I'm here," I breathed, so softly no one but the stone could hear. And the stone, old and patient and full of women's secrets, whispered back, "Not for him." The glow rose again, brighter, washing the chamber in milk-white light. The seam behind us opened without Edda's hand. The passage beyond tilted downward, deeper into the earth, toward a current of air that smelled of something sharp and clean and wild, like storms breaking over summer fields. "Come," Edda said, gathering her satchel. "Sanctuary will hold, but it cannot fight the kind of hunger that rules a king for long." I stood. The warmth had returned to my limbs, a stubborn fire beating back the cold. I touched the pool with my fingertips and felt it cool as a blessing, then turned toward the new dark. As I stepped into it, Kale's voice came again, muffled through stone and distance, softer, aching in a way that made my chest hurt. "Liora, please." I didn't look back. The twins shifted beneath my palm, as if to say go. So I did. deeper into the earth, into the place where the old stories said mothers learned how to survive kings, and kings learned they were not gods. Behind me, the sanctuary sealed its seam, and the forest swallowed the sound. Above in the cave, a man who had thrown me to the wolves listened to the echo of his own voice and found no answer but his breathing. Below, in the dark, an old midwife taught me the first rule of living through a hunt. Become something that cannot be hunted. And somewhere between my heart and the small hearts beneath it, the night made a vow on my behalf, not prey, not orphan, not exile. Mother. The darkness beneath the earth was alive. It pulsed and breathed like a sleeping beast, veins of light winding through the stone like silver blood. Every step deeper into the sanctuary felt like stepping into the womb of the world itself, ancient, heavy with memory. My fingers brushed the walls, and in return, they whispered things I couldn't quite understand. 1,000 women's voices, maybe more. Laughter, pain, promises. Etta walked ahead, her lantern a flicker against the endless dark. "Keep close," she murmured. "The sanctuary shows mercy to mothers. To others it shows nothing at all." My hand rested over my stomach as I followed her. The twins stirred softly beneath my skin, as if sensing the shift in air, the sacred weight of the place. For the first time since my exile, I felt something more than terror. I felt presence, not the kind that demands worship, like the Alpha's throne, but the kind that watches. Ancient, patient, female. We reached a cavern wide enough to hold a forest. Roots hung like braids from the ceiling, dripping with light. Water pooled around our ankles, warm despite the chill above. A single stone dais rose in the center, carved with spirals that glowed faintly blue. Etta gestured for me to climb. "The sanctuary remembers you now, but to protect you, it must know what you carry." "What I carry?" I frowned, pressing my hand to my belly. "They're just children." Etta's eyes softened, but her tone turned solemn. Nothing born from an Alpha King's blood is just anything. I lay upon the dais, the warmth seeping through me. The light climbed the walls, brighter now, curling like smoke until it met the ceiling and bloomed into constellations I didn't recognize. The air thickened. The hum beneath the stone deepened, and then the voice came. Not from Etta, not from any mouth I could see. It came from everywhere. Daughter of the healer's line, blood of mercy and bone of promise. "Why do you seek refuge beneath my roots?" The sound vibrated through my ribs, gentle but thunderous. My breath hitched. "I was cast out," I whispered. "Marked false. Left to die. And yet you live." "I don't know why." "You do." A pause, soft but cutting. "You live because life within you refused to end." The light gathered above me. 2 orbs, faint at first, then strong enough to burn through the shadows. They pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. "No, there's 2 hearts," the voice said. "Twins, 1 shadow, 1 flame. The balance the moon once lost." I didn't understand. My lips parted to speak, but the light dimmed, and the voice faded like smoke drawn away by wind. When I looked at Etta, her expression was unreadable. "The sanctuary doesn't lie," she said. "Your children are bound to something older than the throne. Older than Kale. Older than all of us." I wanted to laugh. Bitter, broken laughter. He would never believe that. Etta's mouth twisted. "He doesn't have to. Belief is a luxury for kings. Survival is for mothers. We stayed below for hours, or maybe days. Time didn't move in the sanctuary the way it did above. I slept in fits, haunted by dreams of Kale's eyes. Sometimes they were the color of gold, sometimes of fire. Sometimes they looked at me the way they once had. Gentle, certain, mine. Other times, they looked through me, past me, like I was nothing but a ghost in his kingdom. When I woke, Edda was mixing herbs into a stone bowl. "You can't stay here forever," she said. "The sanctuary shelters, but it doesn't hide. The world above has a way of finding what it wants." "And what does the world want from me?" I asked. Her gaze cut through me. "Not you, them." My blood went cold. "They're not even born yet." "Which makes them more dangerous," Edda said. "Because potential frightens kings more than enemies do." That night, when I finally climbed back to the surface, the forest had changed. Snow still blanketed the ground, but the air smelled of spring, earth and growth and something wild. The moon hung low and swollen, her light silvering the trees. The ruins of Edda's cave lay quiet. The blackguard had long gone, but the scent of kale lingered, faint but there. Burned into the soil, my heart stuttered, torn between dread and longing. I could almost see him standing there, the curve of his jaw, the way his breath fogged in cold air, the quiet violence that always lived beneath his skin. "You still love him," Edda said, watching me too closely. "I hate him," I said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes those are the same thing." We moved east, toward the highlands where the mist never lifted. It was said that no Alpha's law reached beyond the ridge. Rogues lived there, oathless and free, bound only to the wild. I didn't know if they'd take me in, but I knew one thing. I could not let Kale or Seren find me first. Days blurred. My body ached, my skin blistered from frost and sun alike. But with each mile I felt something growing inside me. Stronger than fear. Sharper than grief. Resolve. The kind born not from courage but necessity. Every night, when I lay by the fire, I whispered to the twins, "You are made of a bond they tried to break. You will be the proof that love, even betrayed, leaves power behind." Sometimes, when the wind moved through the trees just right, I swore I heard whispers answering back. And always, somewhere in the distance, the howl of a wolf I knew too well. Meanwhile, in the Crescent Palace, far from the forests that still remembered my footsteps, Kale Varen sat on his throne and couldn't breathe. The court thought him unbreakable. The men bowed, the women smiled. Seren stood at his side with her perfect mask of innocence. But when the torches dimmed, when the voices faded, he saw my face in every shadow. He had dreamed of me again. The river, the blood, my eyes when he said enough. And when he woke, there was dirt beneath his nails, as if he had clawed through the forest in his sleep. "She's dead," Seren whispered once, tracing her fingers along his arm. "You need to let her go." He didn't answer, because a part of him already knew. Somewhere deep in the wild, the mate bond hadn't died. It had only gone quiet. Back in the mountains, the twins kicked for the first time. The shock of it nearly brought me to my knees. I pressed my hand to my stomach and laughed, breathless, tears streaking my face. For the first time since exile, I didn't feel broken. I felt alive. But far away, under the same moon, Kale's chest tightened, his breath catching mid-command. He didn't know why. He only felt it, a heartbeat that wasn't his, echoing in the hollow he'd made by sending me away. He turned toward the window, looking out at the endless snow. And for the first time in his reign, the Alpha King whispered my name. The forest had begun to thaw when the first omen appeared. A murder of crows gathered above the ridge, their wings beating like war drums. The air turned thick, too still, too heavy, and every instinct in me whispered that the world was about to shift again. Edda had warned me. The moon does not bless without balance. Every gift has a shadow. That night I learned what she meant. We had found shelter among the rogue pack of Ashven, a wild settlement built in the ruins of an old fort. They called themselves the Unbound, wolves who had severed ties with the kingdoms, who obeyed no Alpha's decree. They lived by the old ways, by the hunt and the moon. They had no interest in thrones, only survival. When we stumbled upon their borders, I had been half-starved and shaking. They had surrounded me in seconds. 10 wolves, eyes like pale fire, bodies bristling with suspicion. "What are you doing on unbound land?" one of them demanded, his voice a low growl. Etta didn't flinch. "We come for shelter. The woman carries life. You'll not deny her." A tall wolf stepped forward. Scarred jaw, silver streak through his dark hair, eyes the color of old ash. He looked me over once, then twice, and something in his gaze softened. "She carries alpha blood," he murmured. "You feel it too, don't you?" "I don't want trouble," I said quickly, clutching the edge of my cloak. "I only want to live." His gaze flickered to my stomach. "Then you'll stay until the moon changes. After that, the forest will decide." His name was Ronan, and though he ruled no pack by title, the rogues followed him with a loyalty that needed no law. Days bled into nights. The Unbound lived fiercely and simply, hunters, smiths, healers. No ranks, no mate rituals, no collars, no marks. It was freedom, but a kind that cut both ways. Etta traded her herbs for food and helped heal their wounded. I spent my days weaving hides, learning their customs, listening to the wolves tell stories by firelight. But every night when the wind shifted, I still felt him. Kale. The bond was faint now, a thin thread buried deep beneath pain. Yet sometimes it tugged, a flicker in my chest when the moon rose full, a pulse in my wrist when the name Alpha was spoken. I told myself it meant nothing. But the truth is, you can't unlove the person who marked your soul. You can only learn to live with the echo. On the 12th night, I woke to screams. The forest was on fire, blue flames licking the sky, unnatural and cold. Ronan's people ran to douse them, but the fire didn't burn wood. It burned scent. It erased every trace of the rogues from the air. A curse. I felt it before I saw it. The same heaviness from the night Kyle rejected me. The same pull of the moon bleeding red through the clouds. The air itself trembled. Etta burst into my hut, eyes wide. "They've found us." "Move! Who?" I gasped. Not the blackguard. Worse. Before I could ask, a howl split the night. Low, unnatural, twisted by power. It didn't sound like any wolf I'd ever heard. Etta grabbed my arm and dragged me through the flames, her herbs scattering behind us like dying stars. "It's the moon's curse," she hissed. "The bond that broke you and your mate is feeding on both. The Alpha King carries wrath, and you carry the womb. The magic is trying to mend what he shattered. What does that mean? It means your pain has become prophecy." We reached the forest edge, panting, when the shadows moved. Wolves, but not flesh. Their bodies were made of mist and moonlight, their eyes hollow white. They circled, growling without sound. Ronan appeared beside us, a blade in each hand. "They're hunting you, girl," he said. "Whatever curse follows, it's calling to your blood." "They're not after me," I whispered, trembling. "They're after them." The twins kicked hard. Pain surged through my ribs like lightning. I fell to my knees, clutching my belly, and the mist wolves lunged. Etta threw a charm into the air. A burst of light flared, scattering them for an instant. "Run!" she screamed. "To the river!" But the ground cracked before I could rise. The light turned black. The air imploded, and from the smoke stepped a figure. Not wolf. Not man, but wearing his face Kale. No, not Kale. His eyes were wrong. Too dark. Too empty. The bond in my chest flared, burning hot enough to steal my breath. Liora, the thing said, voice like thunder in a hollow cave. You run from what you are. My throat went dry. You're not him? I am him, it said, stepping closer. The part he buried. The part that still wants you. The mist wolves bowed to him, their forms bending low. The fire dimmed around him, drawn to his presence. I stumbled backward. The twins kicked again, 2 heartbeats pounding inside me, wild and afraid. Etta shouted something in the old tongue, words that cut the air like blades. The shadow Kale snarled and turned on her. Don't, I cried, but too late. A wave of black energy struck her, flinging her against the rocks. The charm around her neck shattered. Etta, I screamed. Go, Liora. She coughed, blood on her lips. The sanctuary, find it again, before he... Her words broke into silence. I turned and ran. Branches tore my skin. Roots caught my dress. But I didn't stop. The forest howled behind me. Every instinct screamed to look back, but I couldn't. Not now. I ran until the ground vanished beneath my feet, and I fell. The river caught me like before. Icy, merciless, alive. The current dragged me through the dark, carrying me away from the curse, from the fire, from the ghost that wore my mate's face. When I finally crawled to shore, I lay there shaking, gasping for air. The mark on my collarbone was glowing again, brighter than ever, and beneath my trembling palms, 2 small hearts beat strong and steady. I looked up at the bleeding moon and whispered, if he's coming for me, let him come. This time I won't run. Far away, in the Crescent Palace, Kale woke screaming. His hands were bleeding. His chamber reeked of smoke. Seren burst through the door, eyes wide. What happened? Kale stared at his reflection, the shadow that flickered behind him. Grinning, something, he said hoarsely, has awakened, and for the first time, the Alpha King looked afraid. The dawn after the cursed fire bled gray over the ruins of Ashfin. Smoke still clung to the treetops, curling like ghosts that refused to rest. I lay hidden in the hollow of a fallen tree, soaked, trembling, every breath a fight. The forest was silent now, too silent. Even the birds had fled. Etta was gone. The rogues who had taken us in, gone. All that remained was the whisper of the river and the heartbeat of the 2 lives inside me. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it again. The bond. It pulsed faintly in my veins, faint as the dying glow of an ember, but real. He was searching for me, not the shadow that hunted me last night. Him. Kale. Far across the mountains, in the marble halls of the Crescent Palace, the Alpha King tore the throne room apart. Broken glass glittered across the floor. The heavy iron doors lay dented and split. Guards kept their distance, their eyes down, their fear thick enough to taste. She's alive, Kale said, voice raw. I can feel it. Seren stood near the window, pale and perfect in her silver gown. The bond is broken. It's only memory, Kale. No. He turned on her, eyes molten gold, burning. The bond doesn't lie. I marked her under the blood moon. Our souls are tied. If she had died, I would have felt it. Serene stepped closer, feigning sorrow, but her hand trembled. You're grieving a ghost. You're not yourself. You haven't been since she betrayed you. Betrayed? Kale's laugh was sharp as glass. You said she forged letters to the rival pack, sold my secrets for gold. You swore on your blood. I did, Seren whispered. And I would again, because I saw what you didn't. She used you, but the doubt had already crept in. Because last night Kyle had seen her, or something wearing her face. In the smoke of his dreams, she'd turned to him, eyes filled with tears and moonlight, whispering, "They're yours." And when he woke, his chest burned as though clawed from the inside out. Back in the forest, I moved before the sun had climbed the sky. The ground was slick with ash, the air sharp with burnt herbs. I scavenged what little remained. A dagger, a few herbs, the broken charm Etta had given me. I pressed it to my heart and whispered, "Guide me." The forest answered with wind. South. So I walked. Each step felt heavier than the last. My body ached with exhaustion, with hunger, with the weight of what I carried. The twins stirred often now, sometimes softly, sometimes with fierce strength that stole my breath. I wondered if they could hear my heart. I wondered if they knew what kind of world waited for them. By the second night, the river's song faded behind me, and mist rolled in, dense, cold, silvered by moonlight. I should have rested, but the bond was growing stronger again, its pull dragging through my veins like a tether tightening. He was close, too close. Cale stood at the edge of the blackwood, his cloak heavy with frost. The blackguard waited behind him, their wolves pacing, restless. He'd followed the bond for days, ignoring Seren's protests, ignoring the council, ignoring the storm that seemed to follow him wherever he went. "She's near," he said quietly. One of the guards frowned. "My king, if she lives, she's been gone for months." Even if Cale's glare silenced him. "Do you smell it?" The wolf's bane. "The herbs, that's her." He took another step into the fog. The air shimmered faintly, a pulse of magic brushing his senses. Old power. He recognized it now, Etta's work. He closed his eyes, remembering the way Liora used to crush herbs between her palms, the smell of lavender and ash clinging to her skin, the way she laughed softly when he teased her for smelling like an apothecary. For the first time in months, the Alpha King felt something break in his chest. Regret. I reached the stone arch at dusk, a ruin swallowed by ivy and shadow. It looked ancient, older than the forest itself, carved with runes worn smooth by time. A faint hum lived in the air there. The sanctuary. Etta had told me it would open for me again only if I was truly ready. I pressed my hand to the stone. It was cold at first, then warm. The markings glowed softly beneath my fingers, and the door opened. I stepped inside and froze. The air was already disturbed. Someone had been here. A cloak lay discarded near the pool, black, threaded in silver. And the scent, unmistakable. Cale. He was here. My pulse thundered as I stepped deeper into the hollow chamber. Every corner whispered of him, his scent, his presence. His shadow pressed into the air like a memory burned too deep to fade. And then I saw him, standing by the moonlit pool. His armor dented, his cloak torn, eyes wild with exhaustion and longing. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then he turned, and the world stopped. Liora. My name from his lips was both a wound and a balm. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice breaking. "I came to find you." His steps were slow, cautious, like approaching a dream that might vanish. "They told me you were dead." "Maybe I should have been," I whispered. His jaw tightened. "Don't say that." "Why not?" I stepped closer, fury and grief fighting in my chest. "You left me to die, Kyle. You believed her lies. You didn't even look at me when they dragged me out like a criminal." His face twisted in pain. "I know. Do you?" I took another step, tears burning hot. "Do you know what it feels like to be hunted by the man who once swore to protect you? To feel his wolves tearing through the forest after you while you carry his blood?" He froze. "What did you say?" I pressed my trembling hand to my stomach. The truth hung in the air, trembling like the last thread of a web. "They're yours, Kyle." Silence. For a moment he didn't breathe, then his knees gave out. his hands trembling as he reached toward me like a man reaching for salvation. Liora. Twins? Yes, my voice cracked. Your children. The ones your betrayal almost killed. His eyes glistened, but the bond between us flared, alive again, burning through every scar, every lie. It hurt, and it healed. Then the light shifted. The pool behind us began to tremble. The sanctuary was waking. The moon above bled crimson once more, and somewhere deep in the forest, something ancient answered. The curse was not done with us, and this time it would not wait for forgiveness. The sanctuary trembled, as if the earth itself remembered every sin ever committed beneath the moon. The pool glowed blood-red, rippling with power too ancient to be tamed. The air thickened until each breath was a weight pressing against my ribs. My pulse, the twins' heartbeat, the hum of Kale's aura, all began to merge into one rhythm. This was the moment the moon goddess had been waiting for. The night the bond would either heal or consume us all. Kale rose slowly from his knees, his golden eyes wide, not with anger but disbelief. He looked at me like a man who'd wandered too long in darkness and finally saw dawn. Twins, he whispered again, voice trembling. Liora, why didn't you tell you? I cut him off, tears spilling hot down my cheeks. When, Kale? Before or after you ordered my exile? Before you believed every lie she told you? Before your guards dragged me through the snow while you stood there and watched? He flinched as if struck. You thought I betrayed you, I spat. And because of that thought, I nearly froze to death. Our children almost never drew breath. The mark on my collarbone burned as I spoke, flaring gold beneath the torn fabric. His matching mark began to glow too, the two sigils pulsing in time. The sanctuary walls vibrated. The pool's glow deepened from crimson to silver, and the scent of ozone filled the air. Kale's voice broke. I was blind, Liora. Serene forged everything, letters, proof, even your scent. She said she caught you meeting spies near the border. I laughed bitterly. And you, the great Alpha King, never thought to ask why your mate would betray you right after binding under the moon? He stepped closer. If I could undo it. You can't. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut through bone. The bond flared again, hotter this time. My body trembled. The twins kicked hard, as if sensing the storm about to break. Something's wrong, I gasped, falling to my knees. Kel rushed forward, catching me before I hit the ground. His hands were warm, steady, too steady. His power brushed mine, and for the first time in months it didn't feel like a threat. It felt like home. Then the moon cracked. A shock wave rolled through the sanctuary. The silver light split apart, fracturing into red veins that crawled across the ceiling. The pool began to boil, steam rising in spirals that took shape. Wolves made of fire and shadow. The curse had come to claim us. Kyle pulled me behind him, eyes flashing gold as his wolf surfaced. Get back, he growled, extending his claws. No! I reached for his arm. You can't fight it. The curse feeds on the bond. It will only grow stronger. Then what do we do? Break it, I said, voice shaking. Before it breaks us. His gaze snapped to me. If we break the bond, we die. Not we, I whispered. Me, Kale froze. Don't. I have to. I looked up at him, memorizing his face, the furrow between his brows, the scars along his jaw, the golden fire in his eyes that had once burned only for me. You were meant to rule, Kale. I was meant to heal. Maybe this is how it ends. He gripped my face in both hands, desperation bleeding through his touch. You think I could live after this? After losing you again? Before I could answer, the curse struck. A surge of black energy shot from the pool, wrapping around us both. Pain tore through my chest. the mark on my collarbone searing like a brand pressed against fire. I screamed. Kale roared. Our bond flared, one last blinding light before darkness rushed in. When I woke, I was weightless. The sanctuary was gone. The sky was endless, painted in silver and shadow. I floated above the world, surrounded by whispers, voices of women long dead, mothers before me, all speaking as one. Liora of the healer's line, you carry not one destiny, but two. Who are you? I asked, though my voice came out as thought, not sound. We are the daughters of the first moon. We were betrayed by kings and blessed by the curse. Now you stand where we once stood, between love and wrath, between creation and ruin. What do you want from me? A choice, the stars pulsed. Below me I saw Kale kneeling in the wreckage of the sanctuary, screaming my name, clutching at the mark on his chest that was already fading. If you release the bond, the curse dies. The twins will live, but you will fade from the world. If you keep it, the curse consumes you both, and the bloodline ends. Tears blurred my vision. My heart ached with something beyond mortal pain. I can't leave them, I whispered. Then you must become something else. The light poured through me. I gasped as energy surged through my veins, cold, pure, infinite. I felt the twins' heartbeats merge with mine. I felt the curse collapse in on itself, screaming as it was unmade. And then, silence. Kyle looked up as the moon broke through the clouds. The sanctuary was still, the pool turned to silver glass. He saw no trace of her. Only the faint glow of her mark burned into the air like starlight. Liora? He whispered. A soft voice echoed through the chamber. Raise them well, Kyle. Teach them what we were denied. The air stirred. The scent of herbs and moonlight filled the room. And then, two faint cries broke the silence. Newborn, alive, pure. Kyle fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as he lifted them into his arms. One had golden eyes, the other silver, and between them, the mark of the moon shimmered. Half flame, half shadow. She lives in them, Kale murmured, pressing his forehead to theirs. She always will, years later. The Crescent Palace changed. The tyranny of kings gave way to something softer, wiser. Two heirs ruled side by side, one with fire in his voice, one with mercy in her touch. And every full moon, when the palace lights dimmed, a gentle glow filled the courtyard. The shape of a woman standing beneath the trees, silver hair drifting like mist, watching over her children, and the man who once broke her heart. Because some bonds don't end with death. They live where love refuses to die, and that was rejected and left to die. Unknowingly, she carried the Alpha King's twins, a story of heartbreak, betrayal, survival, and the kind of love that refuses to die, even when everything else does. If you felt her pain, if you lived her journey, then don't let the story end here. Subscribe to the Alpha Love Stories and become part of our pack. We post new tales of forbidden love, dangerous alphas, and powerful omegas every week. Hit the like button, leave a comment with your favorite moment, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss when the next story drops. Because in this world, love may hurt, but it always howls back. Thank you for listening. And until next time, stay wild beneath the moon.